They are two outsiders who married princes, became favourites of Queen Elizabeth, and are key to the future of the British royal family.
It's not true really, but it's quite fun watching people's reactions.
So if you're in a crowd, you need to be aware that you're all watching to see what the reaction is.
The people in the cars behind have a great time.
On April 1st, 2026, everything flipped upside down in a heartbeat. The breaking news banner from BBC froze people mid-scroll, mid-conversation, mid-breath. And no, this wasn't some prank or headline stunt. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, the woman long seen as calm, quiet, and completely unshakable, stepped forward and spoke with zero hesitation, zero apology. And just like that, 7 years of tight-lipped royal silence cracked wide open. I have never encountered anyone in the royal family who behaved as improperly as Meghan Markle. That one line hit like a shockwave. Within minutes, the palace didn't stay silent. They moved fast with a rare, sharply worded clarification, backing the weight of what had just been said. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The message was clear. Lines had been crossed, and not in a small way. So what pushed Sophie to finally speak out like this? Was this something planned behind closed doors? Or did one woman simply reach her breaking point after years of watching it all unfold? This is the version of the story that's been kept under lock and key. Until now. And at the center of it all is a woman many believed never truly fit the role she stepped into. Before diving into the bombshells, you have to understand who Sophie really is. She's not just another royal figure. She's lived this life for nearly 3 decades. Since marrying Prince Edward in 1999, she's faced the chaos, tabloid storms, public slip-ups, internal tension, and came out stronger, sharper, and fully trusted by King Charles III himself. That kind of credibility doesn't come easy. But here's what makes her voice different. She wasn't born into royalty either. She walked into that world from the outside, just like Meghan did. The difference? Sophie adapted to the system. She let it shape her, not the other way around. So when she talks about expectations, pressure, and responsibility, she's not guessing. She's speaking from lived experience. And that's exactly why this moment matters so much. Because when Sophie speaks, people inside the palace don't just hear her, they listen. And when she's allowed to speak publicly like this, it signals something serious behind the scenes, something that couldn't stay buried anymore. According to her, the tension didn't just appear overnight. It started way back in 2017. Sophie described an early moment, a quiet conversation with Edward, where something already felt off. "Something is not right here," she remembered saying. Not loud, not dramatic, just instinct kicking in early. But what she noticed wasn't confusion or nerves. It was strategy. She described Meghan not as someone trying to find her place, but someone trying to position herself. That's a completely different mindset. Instead of embracing the role in front of her, Sophie believed Meghan had her eyes locked on something bigger, something closer to the center of power. Let that sink in for a second. This wasn't about fitting in. This was about moving up. And here's where it gets even more intense. Sophie made it clear she wasn't talking about fantasy or misunderstanding. She was pointing at something calculated, a mindset that viewed the royal family not as a duty, but as a stage, not a tradition to respect, but a system to reshape. According to her, the title of Duchess of Sussex was never the end goal. It was just the starting point. And behind all those polished photos of the so-called Fab Four, there wasn't unity. There was structure, a strict hierarchy built over generations. But Sophie claims Meghan stepped in like those rules didn't apply to her at all. Think about that. Walking into one of the oldest institutions in the world, something that survived wars, revolutions, and centuries of change, and believing you could reshape it in under 2 years? That's not just confidence. That's a massive miscalculation. Sophie described Meghan's approach as pure Hollywood energy. Loud, fast, attention-driven. But royal life doesn't work like that. In that world, success isn't about being seen. It's about stepping back so the institution stays bigger than any one person. And that's where everything started to fall apart. Because while others like Catherine, Princess of Wales, adjusted and adapted, Sophie says Meghan pushed in the opposite direction. She wanted us to change for her, she explained. And in a system built on tradition, that kind of resistance doesn't go unnoticed. But then, things took a turn that nobody expected. Because this wasn't just about ambition anymore. It had a direction. And according to Sophie, that direction had a name: Prince William. Now let's be clear, she didn't accuse anything romantic, nothing like that. But what she described raised serious eyebrows. A pattern of behavior, subtle, controlled, and repeated. Moves that placed Meghan closer and closer into William's orbit, blurring lines that were never meant to be crossed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but it was consistent. From early gatherings to major events, Sophie claimed there were moments that stood out. Even back at Sandringham in 2017, before the wedding, before everything went public, palace staff had already started noticing things that didn't quite add up. Small details, body language, positioning, interactions that didn't match the expected boundaries. And while the public saw charm and confidence, behind palace walls, people were quietly taking notes. That's when the whispers started, and once they started, they didn't stop. Security and protocol teams weren't focused on what the public saw. They were watching something completely different unfold behind the scenes. According to Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, what raised alarms wasn't just attitude, it was repeated violations of unspoken physical boundaries that everyone in that institution understands instinctively. These weren't small slip-ups either. They formed a clear, consistent pattern. Take May 2018, just days after the royal wedding. At a garden party, instead of a simple nod or polite greeting, Meghan Markle reportedly leaned in for a lingering cheek kiss with Prince William and held onto his forearm longer than expected. People who were there noticed it immediately, and more importantly, so did William. He stiffened right on the spot. That moment didn't come across as friendly, it felt calculated, and insiders didn't ignore it. Then came October 2018 at Buckingham Palace. Cameras caught Meghan placing her hand flat on William's back, something that, in royal settings, carries meaning. That kind of gesture is usually reserved for close personal relationships, not public royal interactions. William reacted fast, shifting his body away, shutting it down without saying a word. Sophie described it as a silent but clear rejection of a line that should never have been crossed in the first place. By 2019, things hadn't cooled down, they escalated. At a polo match, Sophie claimed Meghan repeatedly positioned herself closer to William, even stepping past Prince Harry to speak directly to him. But this wasn't casual conversation. It was, as described, a kind of theatrical closeness, something meant to be seen and interpreted a certain way. It wasn't about connection, it was about perception. And here's where it gets even more intense. Sophie made it clear this wasn't just about a hug or a gesture, it was about what those actions signaled publicly. It created an image of closeness that, according to her, simply wasn't real. And even more important, it wasn't wanted. Now here's the part that really shifts the tone. Sophie doesn't believe any of this was accidental. Not cultural differences, not American informality, none of that. She believes it was intentional. A repeated, deliberate effort to place Meghan visually and socially closer to the future king, disrupting the structure of the royal household from the inside. There were moments, Sophie admitted, where it didn't even seem like Meghan was looking for Harry's approval at all. Instead, the focus appeared to be on William's attention. That detail alone changed how everything was being interpreted behind palace walls. And if that sounds extreme, look at what reportedly happened during the Royal Foundation Forum 2019. On stage, the public saw unity, 4 royals working together. But backstage, the situation was tense. Meghan allegedly pushed back against seating arrangements that had already been agreed on, wanting to be placed directly next to William instead of following the expected couple pairing. During the event itself, she reportedly spoke over Catherine, Princess of Wales, drawing attention and dominating the moment. After it was over, the tension didn't just disappear. Sophie said it left Catherine deeply upset. This wasn't seen as a simple disagreement. It was viewed as a challenge to the entire structure. According to Sophie, Meghan approached the role with a completely different mindset. She believed her public profile gave her equal standing with future leaders of the monarchy. But in that system, status isn't built on fame, it's built on duty and time. Then came something even more serious. The internal review launched in 2021. While the public heard about bullying claims, Sophie revealed that the file went far deeper than that. It wasn't just complaints, it was a detailed record of behavior patterns over time. That included things like late-night informal messages to senior royals, bypassing official channels, and repeated moments where personal boundaries weren't respected, even with figures like Queen Elizabeth II and King Charles III. Staff reportedly felt uncomfortable, but the behavior continued. One of the most serious claims involved private family conversations being shared externally, shaping a narrative that painted Meghan as the outsider struggling inside a rigid system. Sophie's interpretation? This wasn't someone trying to fit in. It was someone trying to reshape the story entirely. She wasn't trying to belong, Sophie recalled. She was trying to position herself. That line says a lot. And when things didn't go her way? According to this perspective, the exit wasn't forced, it was strategic. The system didn't bend, and when it didn't, the response was to walk away and tell a different story publicly. Even the famous Oprah interview 2021 was described not as a breaking point, but as a turning point, a calculated move that shifted everything into the public spotlight. What makes this even more layered is that Sophie says she actually tried to help. She reached out more than once, offering guidance from one outsider to another. But each time, the offer was turned down. The response she remembered? Simple, but telling. I have Harry, that's all I need. And to Sophie, that said everything. Because in her view, this wasn't about support, it was about control. About building a version of reality where Harry stood alone, separated from everyone else who might challenge what was happening. And once that isolation was complete, everything else became easier to shape. If you've ever wondered how Prince Harry, a man raised inside one of the closest royal sibling bonds, ended up completely estranged from Prince William, this is where things get uncomfortable. According to Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, what happened wasn't sudden. It was slow, calculated, and deeply personal. Between 2019 and early 2020, she described a quiet breakdown of Harry's connections to his old world. Communication lines to William's office? Cut off. Requests for casual meetups between the brothers? Blocked again and again with the same type of response. Meghan says we're busy. Meghan feels we need space. It didn't look dramatic on the surface, but behind it all, Sophie claimed, was a psychological wall being built piece by piece. She positioned herself as the only one who truly understood him, Sophie explained. And at the same time, everyone else, family, friends, people who had known Harry his whole life, were slowly reframed as the problem. That shift didn't just create distance, it rewrote his entire perspective. And here's the part that hits hardest. Sophie didn't ignore Harry's struggles, she acknowledged them fully. The loss of Princess Diana, the pressure of growing up as the spare, the emotional weight he carried for years, those were real wounds. Anyone who followed his story knows that. But according to this account, instead of helping him heal, those vulnerabilities became leverage. His pain wasn't eased, it was sharpened. His frustration wasn't calmed, it was reinforced. And over time, the family he once relied on started to feel like the enemy instead of support. That's the part of this story that lingers. Not the deals, not the headlines, but the human cost of watching someone drift further away from the people who loved him most. Then came July 2019, the christening of Archie. On the surface, it looked like a private family moment, but Sophie described it very differently. According to her, it wasn't just about protecting a child. It was a clear move to assert control. Meghan Markle reportedly rejected official photographers, kept the godparents private, and limited access in ways that broke from long-standing royal tradition. And while it was framed publicly as privacy, Sophie believed it sent a deeper message, one that challenged the authority of Queen Elizabeth II herself. And when the palace didn't grant the Sussex household the same status, funding, and global platform as the future king and queen, that's when everything shifted. According to Sophie, every no became something bigger. Protocols turned into accusations. Boundaries became claims of unfair treatment. What started as internal disagreement was, in her view, transformed into something far more public and far more explosive. By 2026, things had only gotten more complicated. The debate over Archie and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor and their royal titles became a major issue behind palace doors. Yes, the titles Prince and Princess started being used publicly in 2023, but Sophie revealed that recognition wasn't automatic internally, and according to her, it had nothing to do with background or identity. It's about what those titles represent, she explained. Lineage, trust, transparency. Those aren't just words in that system, they're standards. And then came a moment that caught serious attention. When questions about documentation and long-running public speculation came up, Sophie didn't dismiss them outright. Instead, she answered carefully. The Crown never demanded a DNA test, but when questions arise, discretion matters. That wording alone had people analyzing every detail. According to her perspective, the intense privacy around the births, while understandable to some, also created uncertainty inside an institution that runs on clarity and tradition. And then there's Harry's ongoing legal fight with the Home Office over security. His request to personally fund armed police protection drew sharp criticism. To demand state protection without the duties that justify it, that's not just tone-deaf, it's risky, Sophie stated. Her comparison to Prince Andrew made the message even clearer. Step away from official roles and certain privileges don't follow. Behind the scenes, King Charles III had already made his stance clear by late 2024. There would be no return to working royal life, no second chance summit, no reset. As Sophie put it, the door wasn't locked. It was rebuilt. And through all of this, one figure stood in complete contrast. Catherine, Princess of Wales. If Meghan was seen as disruption, Catherine represented consistency. Calm, focused, and steady. Sophie's description of her wasn't dramatic, it was grounded. No competition, no chasing attention, no pushing boundaries. Just showing up, doing the work, and letting time build credibility. While headlines swirled elsewhere, Catherine was focused on long-term impact, early childhood development, public service, real initiatives that quietly shape the future. She understood the crown isn't about the spotlight, Sophie said. It's about what you carry over time. And that difference? According to Sophie, it changed everything. The numbers told a story no spin could hide. According to Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, by late 2025, the public had already made up its mind. Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood at a massive 73% favorability. Prince William followed with 69%, and Meghan Markle, just 17%. Same family, same era, same spotlight, but completely different outcomes. That gap wasn't random. It meant something. And then came the moment that made it impossible to ignore. The Together at Christmas concert became a direct clash. While Catherine's event quietly focused on tradition and service, Meghan's team reportedly lined up a competing Netflix holiday special in the exact same time slot. This wasn't coincidence, it was strategy. But the result? Not even close. Catherine pulled in 8.4 million viewers across the UK. Meghan's special didn't even make the top 10. That contrast spoke louder than any headline. Sophie didn't hold back on what it meant. She pointed to a pattern, timing major media moments against key royal events. From the Oprah interview in 2021 during Prince Philip's illness, to Netflix drops around major royal initiatives, it all added up. It shows a lack of grace, Sophie said bluntly. Because in her view, you can't tear down the institution while still trying to sell its image at the same time. And here's where the public reaction really mattered. People noticed the difference. Catherine's work, early childhood programs, mental health advocacy, long-term initiatives, didn't rely on cameras or streaming deals. It didn't need constant promotion. It just existed, consistently. And that authenticity, it landed. Sophie put it in a way that hit hard. One woman serves quietly and keeps her emotions private. The other shares those emotions in front of a global camera. That contrast stuck with people. As the April 1st broadcast moved toward its final moments, the tone shifted. This wasn't just about the past anymore, it was about what comes next. Sophie described a monarchy that had been tested, but not broken. A system that came out of the chaos sharper, more focused, and more aware of its role. All the drama, the interviews, the documentaries, the legal fights had forced something important: clarity. "We've had our corrections," she said firmly. "We know who we are now." That statement wasn't emotional, it was final. By late 2025, the reality had started to show in numbers beyond public opinion. Reports suggested streaming deals were being scaled back, and the Archewell Foundation saw a major drop in donations. The momentum that once powered the Sussex brand slowed down, and Sophie's point was simple but sharp. You can't build a brand off royal connections while also attacking the same institution that gives those connections meaning. Eventually, people noticed the contradiction. You can't call a family toxic and still sell its image, she explained. And once that contradiction becomes obvious, the whole thing starts to collapse under its own weight. Then came another key reveal. The palace staying silent all those years. That wasn't weakness, it was strategy. According to Sophie, King Charles III and William made a deliberate choice not to engage publicly, because responding would only fuel the narrative further. Instead, they focused on duty, events, and stability. And over time, that silence worked. By continuing with events like the Christmas concert, public service, and a more streamlined monarchy, the palace didn't fight the narrative. They outlasted it. And then Sophie delivered her final words on Meghan, and they landed heavy. "She treated us like a stage," she said. "We treated her like family until she showed she wasn't one." No anger, no shouting, just a statement that felt final. What she described as the wild element from the beginning, the refusal to adapt, didn't destroy the monarchy, but it did push it to its limits. It exposed tensions, forced adjustments, and tested everything. And when everything settled, the core remained. The crown, the duty, the people who chose to carry it. The cameras moved on, the interviews faded, the headlines slowed down, but the institution stayed. And now, for the first time, this version of the story is fully out in the open. So here's the question. If you believe the monarchy just survived one of its most intense internal challenges in modern history, what does that say about its future? And now everything comes down to this moment. After all the tension, the silence, the interviews, and the fallout, one question still hangs in the air louder than ever. What really lasts when the spotlight fades? Because here's the truth. People are starting to see more clearly now. Institutions like the monarchy don't survive for centuries by reacting emotionally or chasing headlines. They survive by staying steady when everything around them gets loud and chaotic. And that's exactly what played out here. While one side leaned into media battles, statements, and public narratives, the other side stayed rooted in structure, duty, and long-term thinking. That contrast didn't just shape public opinion, it decided the outcome. And let's be real for a second. Attention can be powerful, but it doesn't always equal trust. And in a system built on legacy, trust will always outlast attention. That's why when everything settled, people didn't just remember the drama. They remembered who stayed consistent, who showed up, who kept doing the work without turning it into a performance. Because at the end of the day, this was never just about titles or status. It was about direction. One path tried to reshape the system from the outside. The other protected it from within. And history has a way of keeping score, even when people think the moment has passed. So now it's your turn to look at everything you've heard and decide for yourself. Not based on headlines, not based on viral clips, but based on patterns, actions, and outcomes. Because the biggest stories aren't always the loudest ones. They're the ones that reveal themselves over time. And this one, it's far from forgotten. If you made it this far, drop your thoughts below. I want to hear where you stand on all of this. And if you're paying attention to how these stories really unfold, make sure you stay locked in, because there's always more beneath the surface than what we're shown.